The forest was drowning in darkness. Clouds had devoured the moon, and the smell of rain hung heavy in the air. Somewhere far away, lightning split the sky, and the echo of thunder rolled over the mountains like a warning. Down in a hollow, a single shack stood, its roof sagging under years of storms. Inside, a fire burned low, spitting embers. Shadows danced along the wooden walls, their movement almost human in the flicker of the flames. Anareth sat in the far corner. Her dress was ripped and clung to her legs with mud. Her hair hung in tangled, damp strands. Dirt streaked her face, mixing with the dry blood near her lip. She was shivering, but her eyes, those dark, guarded eyes, were still. There was fear there, yes, but under it, a strange calm, the kind of stillness that comes when a person stops hoping. Just hours ago, 4 men from a neighboring tribe had dragged her off the road. She'd been bound, gagged, and shoved into the back of a wagon. And if Ronan hadn't been passing through the forest, if he hadn't cut them down, Anna would have been taken somewhere she would never return from. Ronan was no savior by choice. A lone warrior, a survivor of a long and bloody war. He carried his past like a scar under the skin. He'd seen too many die, some at his hands, others in ways he wished he could forget. Somewhere along the way, his heart had turned to stone. He'd made rules for himself. Trust no one. Save no one unless you have to. Never let anyone close. And yet here he was. He'd built a small fire to keep them warm, patched a cut on her temple, and given her his cloak. Now, as he crouched near her, he could see her legs trembling. "Let me see your wound," he said, his voice calm but unyielding. Anara's hand tightened on the hem of her skirt. "Please don't lift my skirt." The words caught him off guard. To him, this was survival. Stop the bleeding. Keep her alive until dawn. But her voice, it wasn't just fear. It was a plea layered in something heavier. Something that whispered of old wounds and buried shame. Her eyes were fixed on him, silently begging him not to touch the fabric. "I'm trying to help you," Ronan said. Anara's lips trembled. "Some wounds aren't just on the skin." For a long moment, he said nothing. The fire popped between them. Then, slowly, carefully, he lifted the edge of the skirt. The sight punched the air from his lungs. Her legs were marked with scars. Some were fresh and red. Others had healed into jagged white lines. Burns shaped like brands. Cuts that had never been cleaned properly. Bruises so deep they looked painted onto her skin. It wasn't the work of a single night's cruelty. This was years. He let the fabric fall. His voice was low when he asked, "Who did this?" Her gaze dropped to the floor. "The men who said I belonged to them." Ronan's hand tightened around the hilt of his sword. "Then they'll answer for it." The forest beyond the shack came alive with sound. Dogs barked in the distance, faint but closing in. "They're tracking us," Ronan muttered. He rose, grabbing his sword and slinging his pack over his shoulder. "I'll be back," he said, moving toward the door. Her hand shot out and caught his wrist. "Don't go. They'll kill you." He looked down at her, his voice quiet but steady. "If I die saving you, that's a good death." Then he was gone, vanishing into the trees. Time stretched thin in his absence. Anara sat by the fire, her fingers clenched in the cloak he'd given her. Every gust of wind outside sounded like footsteps. She wasn't praying for his safety. She didn't believe in such miracles, but her heart was beating harder than it had in years. She didn't want him to die. Not for her. 2 hours passed before the forest went silent. Then, from the shadows, he emerged. His clothes were splattered with blood, his breathing hard. But his eyes, they burned with something unspoken. "They won't touch you again," he said, dropping his sword with a dull thud. Anara rose slowly and walked toward him. This time, she lifted her skirt herself, showing the damage not because she had to, but because she wanted him to see all of it, to know what he was protecting. "They're yours now," she whispered. "Will you carry them?" Ronan didn't look away. "As long as I breathe, you'll carry nothing alone. You're mine now." It wasn't possession, it was a vow. And in that moment, the walls around his heart crumbled. Beneath them was a man who, for the first time in years, wanted to live for someone else. They left at first light. The forest thinned, giving way to open grassland. The air was heavy with the promise of rain. Ronan kept scanning the horizon, knowing their troubles weren't over. The journey was quiet. He spoke of battles long past, of comrades lost. She spoke little, but when she did, it was about the 2 good days she remembered from her childhood. Once, she even smiled, a small, fragile thing, and Ronan felt like sunlight after a winter that had gone on too long. By the 3rd night, they found a small village tucked into the hills. A woman there rented them a cabin with a single bed and a weak fire. The wind howled outside, rattling the shutters. Anna sat by the window, staring at the black sky. Ronan, that night you lifted my skirt and you saw only the scars. But you didn't look at me like they did. You gave me my dignity back. Her voice shook. I think I want to trust you. He held her gaze for a long time. And I'll never give you a reason to regret it. The sound of hoofbeats shattered the moment. Ronan stood, sword in hand. Anna arose with him. The fear in her face was gone, replaced by something sharper. This time, she said, I fight with you. Ronan stared at her for a moment, and in that instant he understood. Anna was no longer just someone to protect. She was someone who would stand beside him, blade in hand, unbroken. And though their story had only just begun, Ronan knew the truth. He lost his soul the night he lifted her skirt. Not because of what he saw, but because he found the only thing worth fighting for. The sun had already begun its descent when Cole guided the horses back into the corral. The golden light washed over the valley, catching the dust in the air, making it glow. Tala was waiting near the barn, her dark hair loose, swaying in the evening breeze. She'd been helping him for weeks now, mending fences, hauling water, and even learning to ride. But there was still something in her eyes, a distance he couldn't quite cross. You came back late, she said softly, not accusing, just stating the fact. Had to check the north fence, Cole replied, brushing the dust from his hat. Cattle been pushing through again. Tala looked away, her gaze fixed on the horizon. The mountains, they call to me, she murmured. But this place, it's starting to feel like it could be mine too. Cole studied her carefully. She had come to him as a frightened, wounded stranger, barely speaking, wary of his every move. Now, she stood tall, her voice steady, the fire in her spirit burning again. It was a quiet victory for her, and maybe for him too. Inside the cabin, the fire crackled. Cole poured her a cup of coffee, the way she liked it, a little sugar, no milk. She took it with a small smile, their fingers brushing just briefly. That fleeting contact was enough to make him aware once again of how much she'd come to mean to him. You'll be safe here, he said, almost to himself. Tala's eyes met his. Safe, but for how long? The question unsettled him. In the distance, rumors had been swirling. Riders passing through spoke of trouble brewing with settlers, and whispers of her tribe seeking retribution. He didn't know if her staying here would bring danger to them both. That night, he sat on the porch long after she'd gone to sleep. The stars stretched endlessly overhead, the cool desert wind cutting through his shirt. He thought about the years he'd spent alone, the silence he'd once believed he needed. Now, that silence felt heavier, like something was missing when she wasn't near. By morning, the decision had already taken root in his mind. If trouble came, he wouldn't let her face it alone. When she stepped outside, the sunrise catching her face in gold, he spoke without hesitation. Tala, whatever's ahead, we face it together. You hear me? For a moment, she didn't answer. Then she stepped closer, her hand resting lightly on his chest. I hear you, she whispered, and in that small, unspoken promise, the distance between them finally began to close. The night after the gunfight had been restless for Noah. Even though the fire burned warm in the cabin, he could still see the image of Claire trembling in the corner when he'd first found her. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard the gunshots again. By morning, the air was thick with the smell of wet earth after a night of rain. Claire stood near the window, watching the mist roll off the hills. She clutched one of Noah's old shirts around her shoulders. It was too big for her, but it made her feel safe. You didn't sleep? Noah said quietly from the doorway, holding 2 mugs of coffee. Claire shook her head. Every time I tried, I heard them coming back. Her voice was a whisper, but it carried the weight of fear. They're gone, Noah assured her, stepping closer. And they're not coming back while I'm here. For a moment, they just stood there. Claire looked up at him, her eyes searching his face for something, maybe certainty, maybe comfort. And in that silence, Noah felt a strange pull in his chest, something he hadn't felt in years. Later that day, Noah saddled his horse. I need to ride into town, get supplies. You'll be safe here, but keep the door locked. Claire hesitated. What if anyone comes, he interrupted gently, you take my rifle and you aim straight. She nodded reluctantly, but as Noah turned to leave, she grabbed his arm. Be careful, Noah. That simple touch lingered with him all the way to town. In town, the sheriff pulled him aside. Heard about last night. Those men were part of Hank Laramie's crew. If you killed 2 of them, he'll come for the woman. You'd best send her away. Noah's jaw tightened. She's not going anywhere. The sheriff gave a weary sigh. Then you'd better be ready. Laramie's not the forgiving kind. By the time Noah returned to the cabin, the rain had stopped, but the wind carried a chill. Claire was sitting by the fire, sewing the torn sleeve of his shirt. She looked up and smiled faintly. Figured I owed you at least this much, she said softly. Noah hung his hat and knelt beside her. Claire, there's something you need to know. The man who sent those outlaws, he's not done. Her hands stilled. You mean we're not safe? We will be, he said firmly, looking into her eyes. But it might mean running. And if we run together. Claire's breath caught. Together? Yeah. He reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from her cheek. I'm not letting you face this world alone again. And for the first time since he'd met her, she let herself believe him. Outside, far beyond the hills, riders were already on their way. But inside that small cabin, 2 people who had been strangers just days ago were beginning to feel like they belonged to each other.